The Colorado Avalanche are surging as we approach the trade deadline, but how will the defending Stanley Cup champions handle it? Chris Micielli of Locked On Avalanche joins us to talk about that and all things Avs next on the Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show a familiar voice and face to Locked On NHL listeners, Chris Micielli of Locked On Avalanche. And Chris, this team has battled injuries all year long, and yet here we are getting close to the trade deadline, and we've got a 5-game winning streak, 3 points out of first place with 2 games in hand. How has this team been able to hold it together this year? It's been a gauntlet of injuries.
It's been like, it's nothing that we're not used to in Avalanche land. They just seem to every year have injuries and somehow overcome them. And this year, I think the ante's been upped a little bit more with all of the injuries that they've had. This has kind of been unprecedented for them. But again, they just seem to have a way to stay afloat. And as you get healthy, as the season goes on, everybody focuses on how teams start. You know what I mean? And it's really not about how you start. It's about how you finish in the regular season. And the Avs are peaking at the absolute right time. They're getting healthy at the absolute right time. Nathan MacKinnon is just, he's usually on a different stratosphere than other people, but he has just upped his play. Mikko Rantanen's having a fantastic season. He's the one guy that stayed healthy throughout all of this is Mikko Rantanen. And he's really come of age this year. And he's really taken the throne for the Avs this year and just kind of run with it. But they make great move. They made they got Dennis Malgin on the waiver wire, and who's he's not setting the world on fire, but he fits well. The guys they brought up from the AHL team, they just seem to make the right moves and just stay in games, and that's what they've done again this year. I don't think Jared Bednar gets enough credit for doing the things that he does. And, and now you continue to you still have injuries. Cale Makar's still out with, his concussion issues, but they just do this year after year, Gil. It's kind of amazing to watch because you would just think all the injuries that they've had, they would be nowhere near where they are, but they are. It's kind of impressive.
Talk to me about Alexander Georgiev and what he's meant to this team this year, because, quietly, Colorado's getting steady goaltending.
He doesn't get talked about enough. And I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh, we got to put him on like the tier 1 goalies of the league and stuff like that. But no, he's not with the, Shesterkins and Vasilevskis of the world, but he might be a notch below them with how he's playing. Like Kyle and I on our show have talked about him a lot. Right. And the rub on him was like he just didn't have enough playing time in New York, and he needed to go somewhere that he could be that guy. Okay, well, here's your opportunity, and it's for the defending championship team. Have fun, and he's doing it. He's doing for the last few years, Avalanche they've had good goalies, but they haven't really been the goalies where they would steal you a game. Where they if your team's not playing well, you always want that goalie to be the one that can stand on his head and win you a game, like a game you don't deserve to be winning. And he's done that a few times this year. So I think they've struck gold with him. They gave him a shot. They trusted their instincts with him. They trust what everybody was saying about him, and he's rewarded them. He's a quick goalie. He goes down to the butterfly. He pops back up quicker than most goalies that the Avalanche have had recently. So he's a different type of goalie in that aspect. Because, the past couple of years, you've had good goalies, but they haven't just, there's goalies that give up those juicy rebounds. And man, like Darcy Kemper was just known for that for the Avs. And you don't see it with him. He plays a kind of simplistic goalie position, but he does it so well. And when you have that good defense in front of him, he's only got to stop 20 shots, 25 shots per game you would like. It will put them in a good position to win. He's done it all year long. He's been really, really impressive.
Doing what the team needs, and that's
Yeah.
all you could ask of a goaltender. What is the strategy now? Trade deadline is less than a week away. Your team is surging. You still hopefully will be getting back your McKinnons and your Makars, or excuse me, your Landeskog's and your
Yeah.
Makars before the playoffs get underway. So how are the Avs going to approach the trade deadline?
The Avs they're always involved in talks for specific players, but rarely do they pull them in, like the top tier guys in the trade deadline. And I think that's going to be again this year. Not to say that they're not going to try. They'll try, but I think they don't have the assets and the prospects and the picks that other teams do. And I think they're just going to get outbid on by other teams. I don't know. I like they've made two moves so far, and they were depth moves, right? They brought back Matt Nieto, which was a good move. You know, that's a depth piece. And then they just traded for Keith Kincaid for backup, depth goalie position, right? That's kind of where, and that move proves interesting for a number of reasons, but I think that speaks to what the Avalanche are looking at right now. They just, for next year's draft, they have their first round draft pick, and then they don't pick till the 5th round. So they don't have a 2nd, 3rd, or 4th pick. And when they were trading last year, they did not want to give up that 1st round pick. So I can't envision them turning around this year and saying like, okay, now we'll give it up. If there's a deal too good to be true, maybe they do it. It's not completely off the table, but I feel like because this draft is kind of deep, and even if the Avalanche are picking late in the 1st round, I still feel like they could get like a good prospect. They have to build their prospect pool back up, because they've depleted it recently. It's worked out. You won the Stanley Cup. I don't think anybody's complaining about that, right? But they've gotten rid of some guys that they had plans for. So they can't just year in and year out. They're not built that way. They're not a team that does that every single year they have no problem just giving away prospects and picks, and we'll figure it out. They like to have a strong unit in the NHL and AHL team. And their AHL, their Colorado Eagles, is depleted a little bit. They have guys that they're not going to move. They could, but they're not going to do it because they don't want to sacrifice the future. So I don't see a big trade season coming for them. Like I said, like the couple of depth moves, maybe they do another one somewhere. Maybe you can never have enough defensemen going into the playoff. Maybe they do that for like a Luke Shen or something like that. But I think it's going to be kind of crickets for the most part for the Avalanche. And this is sometimes corny and cheesy to say, you haven't had Gabe Landeskog all year. That is like getting a brand new player if and when he comes back, which they're saying right now is mid-March. So it's almost like bringing in a trade piece too.
Is there any possibility that they maybe trade a player they don't need who's a depth player to add some prospects or picks?
Like a depth player they have now to like a depth for depth type of thing.
Yeah.
They did that last year, like with they brought in like Nico Sturm and got rid of Tyson Jost. And it just because it was one of those things where Tyson Jost just wore out his welcome. Like they tried and tried and tried. They actually just did that with Martin Kaut to bring back Matt Nieto.
Right.
Martin Kaut was the same thing, just years and years and years of just trying. And then they eventually had to get to the point where it's like, all right, let's just change the scenery time, right? Mm-hmm. Is there anybody playing for them right now? Nobody. He was definitely the one, Martin Kaut. I don't know if there's anybody else like on their current roster that they feel like they would give up to bring in just substitute depth for depth. I think they're happy with it. So I kind of feel like if they do bring in some more depth guys, it's just for your mid-range AHL guy, which they'll part with, or a mid-round pick. If they want to give up their 5th and then not have a 3rd, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th, you can do that. Or next year's 3rd, or something like right. That. Nothing that's going to like set the world on fire or just move the needle all that much. That's why I just feel like it's going to be. And I say this and they'll go get Patrick Kane or something like that. Who knows? Who knows?
We shall see. Chris, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, we're Twitter, LOPN_Avalanche. That's like I said on Twitter, Instagram, just Locked On Avalanche, and definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search for Locked On Avalanche there as well.
All right, Chris, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us today.
Anytime, Gil.
Today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories? Then you got to try a Built Bar. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they are all covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, and my personal favorite, cookies and cream. And look, not only do Built Bars taste great, but the macros are incredible. They average just 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar per bar, but they pack a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now, while you can still go to Built.com to pick up a box and order it and have it delivered to your home, you can also go to your local Walmart or Sam's Club and pick up a box in person. So check out Built Bar, the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. You can thank me later.